Welcome to the deep dive.
Uh,
We basically take a whole stack of sources, could be articles, research, notes we've made, and we pull out the key insights, the most important bits.
Think of it as, a way to get up to speed quickly, understand complex stuff without getting totally buried.
Exactly, a shortcut to being well-informed.
And today, our mission, our deep dive, is all about understanding what makes some groups incredibly successful.
Right. We're focusing on Daniel Coyle's book, The Culture Code. That's our main source here.
Yeah, it's a great one.
And this is really for you, the learner, someone who wants that quick, thorough knowledge, maybe sees different angles, gets those aha moments.
But without the information overload, we try to make it digestible.
So the central question, right, from the book's intro, why do some groups just work? They achieve more than you'd expect based on the individuals.
While other groups, even with really talented people, they just fall flat. They achieve less.
Yeah, it's a puzzle.
And the book kicks off with a really neat illustration of this. Peter Skillman's Spaghetti Marshmallow Challenge.
Okay, yeah, let's break that down. It sounds simple enough.
It is. Teams of 4 get 20 sticks of spaghetti, a yard of tape, a yard of string, and 1 marshmallow.
And the goal, build the tallest freestanding structure you can, marshmallow on top.
Right. But the interesting part is who the teams were. Skillman put business school students head-to-head with kindergartners.
Kindergartners. Okay, so your first thought is obviously the business students, right? They're smart, strategic.
That's the instinct, definitely. Planning, strategy, leadership skills. You'd think they have the edge.
But that's not what happened.
Not at all. The outcome was, well, pretty stunning. The kindergartners consistently built taller structures. Their average was 26 inches.
Wow. And the business students,
Less than 10 inches on average.
get out.
Yeah.
That's a huge difference.
It is. And the kids didn't just beat the business students. They also outperformed lawyers who averaged about 15 inches, and even CEOs who were around 22 inches.
Okay, so this really flips the script on what makes a group successful.
It really does. The core takeaway seems to be that successful collaboration isn't just about smart planning or hierarchy. It's much more about interaction and experimentation.
So our assumption that individual intelligence and skills are the key drivers, that might be wrong, or at least incomplete.
It seems interaction is maybe more critical.
How did the approaches differ then?
Well, the book explains that the business students spent a lot of time on what it calls status management.
Like figuring out who's in charge, debating ideas,
Yeah.
planning the perfect strategy.
Exactly. All that jockeying for position, the planning. It ate up time. And often their structure would collapse right at the end because they rushed the actual building part.
Okay, and the kindergartners.
They just started building. They tried things, stuck spaghetti together, tested it, added tape. If it fell, they started again.
So more action, less talk.
Pretty much. Action, experimentation, collaboration. They weren't worried about status or whose idea it was. Just making it work.
And that's the heart of the culture code, right? Exploring that method the kindergartners used.
Yes. The method is group culture. And Coyle makes a strong case for its impact. He cites a Harvard study found that groups with strong cultures saw their net income increase by, wait for it, 756% over 11 years.
756%. That's staggering.
That's-
So culture isn't just like fluffy stuff.
Not at all. It has real, measurable results. And the key point Coyle makes is that culture isn't some fixed thing you either have or don't.
It's learnable.
It's a set of skills, things you can actively cultivate.
Okay, so what are these skills?
The book breaks it down into 3 core skills: build safety, share vulnerability, and establish purpose.
Today we're tackling the first one.
Yep. The foundation, build safety.
All right, let's dive into skill number 1. Build safety. The book frames this as like the absolute foundation, the bedrock.
Exactly. You can't really build the other skills without this base layer of safety.
And how does Coyle illustrate this?
He uses another experiment, this one by Will Phelps. It's called the bad apple experiment.
Sounds ominous.
Well, the goal was pretty straightforward. See what happens when you put a negative person into a group. How does it affect performance?
Okay, how did they do it?
Phelps had an actor, let's call him Nick, join about 40 different 4-person groups.
And Nick wasn't exactly a team player.
No. He was playing one of 3 specific negative roles. The jerk, who was aggressive and critical, the slacker, who just didn't pull his weight, or the downer, who was pessimistic and withdrawn.
And the groups had a task to do.
Yeah, they had to come up with a marketing plan for a fictional startup.
And the results? Did Nick make a difference?
A huge difference. It was actually quite striking. Whichever role Nick played, jerk, slacker, or downer, he consistently dragged the group's performance down.
By how much?
By 30 to 40%.
Wow. That's massive. So even just being a downer, like low energy and pessimistic?
Yep. Even that seemingly passive negativity significantly hurt the group's output and, their overall vibe. As the slacker, his laziness seemed almost contagious.
Did anyone ever call him out on it? Confront him?
Interestingly, no. Phelps observed that the groups tended to just absorb the negativity. They mirrored Nick's behavior in subtle ways.
That's concerning.
It is. But there was one exception. One group that seemed immune.
The outlier group. What happened there?
Well, this one group, they managed to perform well despite Nick's negativity. And it seemed to boil down to the actions of one person in that group, a guy named Jonathan.
Okay, so what was Jonathan doing? Was he like a super strong leader who shut Nick down?
Not really, not in a traditional sense. Phelps noted it wasn't about being forceful, it was much more subtle.
Like what?
Things like leaning forward when others spoke, using positive body language, smiling, laughing, but not in a mean way. He'd diffuse tension, maybe with a light comment.
Asking questions. Listening.
Exactly. Asking inclusive questions, making sure everyone felt heard, really active listening. Small things, but they added up.
So Jonathan wasn't necessarily the smartest or most skilled person on the team?
Probably not. But he created an environment of safety and connection. He made it possible for the others to ignore Nick, basically, and get on with the work.
So he was fostering safety through these little cues.
Precisely. Which brings us to this core idea in the book, belonging cues.
Belonging cues, okay.
Coyle talks about how these really high-performing groups, he looked at Navy SEALs, successful schools like KPP, improv groups like Upright Citizens Brigade, design firms like IDA.
Diverse groups.
Very diverse. But they often describe their teams feeling like family.
That word comes up a lot.
It does. And it's not just a nice feeling. This sense of family, this deep connection, seems to allow for more risk-taking. People feel safer being vulnerable.
So what does that look like in practice? What did Coyle observe in these familial groups?
He saw consistent patterns of interaction. Things like close physical proximity, lots of eye contact.
Physical touch even.
Yeah, casual physical touch, like a hand on a shoulder, short, energetic conversations, lots of mixing people talking to everyone, not just the leader.
Fewer interruptions, more questions.
Exactly. Active listening was huge, lots of humor, laughter, and just small courtesies, Saying thanks, holding a door.
The author mentions feeling almost addicted to being around these groups, that sense of energy and comfort.
Yeah, that chemistry. It feels intangible, but maybe it's not. Maybe we can actually measure it.
Which leads us to MIT, right? The Human Dynamics Lab.
Yep. Alex Sandy Pentland's work there, they're using technology to try and quantify this group chemistry.
And they use these sociometers. What are those?
They're basically small wearable devices, like a credit card you wear on a lanyard.
And they measure
all sorts of interaction data. How much someone talks, the energy in their voice, their speaking rate, how smoothly turns are taken in conversation.
Interruptions, too.
Interruptions, vocal mimicry, like subconsciously matching someone's tone, physical proximity to others, face-to-face time, a whole range of signals.
So it's capturing the unspoken stuff, the proto-language, as the book calls it.
Exactly, the belonging cues, the stuff that builds that safe connection, often below our conscious awareness. And the big insight is that these cues are incredibly powerful predictors of how well a group will perform.
More powerful than what's actually being said sometimes.
In some cases, yes. These cues are like a constant stream of signals answering those deep primal questions our brains have. Am I safe here? Do I have a future with these people? Are there dangers?
And Pentland argues these are ancient signals, predating language.
Yeah, deeply rooted in our evolution. Our unconscious brains are highly attuned to them. The book boils down belonging cues to 3 basic qualities.
Okay, what are they?
First, energy. Are you invested in this exchange? Second, individualization. Do you see me as unique and valued? And third, future orientation. Is this relationship going to continue?
So these cues together signal, you belong here. You're safe.
Right. It creates what Amy Edmondson at Harvard calls psychological safety. Our brains are wired to worry about social rejection back in evolutionary times. Being kicked out of the group was often a death sentence.
So we need active signals of safety to override that fear.
Exactly. And it's not just one signal. It needs to be a steady pulse, a constant stream of these cues. Coyle uses a quote from Sam Rayburn. Any jackass can kick down a barn, but it takes a good carpenter to build one. Safety is easily destroyed, harder to build.
Going back to the bad apple experiment, Nick was sending out constant non-belonging cues. Alarm bells.
Well, Jonathan was sending out those safety signals, that consistent pulse.
And Pentland found this pattern holds up everywhere. Hospitals, call centers.
Yeah, negotiations, pitches. He consistently found that you could predict performance based on these belonging cues, often better than by analyzing the content of what was said.
There was that negotiation experiment.
Right, where just the first 5 minutes of sociometric data, just the interaction data, strongly predicted who would get the better deal, more than the actual arguments made.
And the entrepreneur pitches.
Similar thing, the sociometer data from the pitches almost perfectly predicted how executives would rank them. But angel investors who only read the business plans rank them very differently.
So the executives were unconsciously picking up on cues about belief, confidence, determination.
Exactly. Things communicated through interaction, not just words. Pentland compares it to a jazz quartet.
How so?
It's not just about each musician playing their part perfectly. It's about the interplay, the unconscious reactions, the connection between them. That's what makes the music great.
So what are the key measurable factors Pentland identified for high-performing teams?
He lists 5 main ones. 1, everyone talks and listens in roughly equal measure, often in short contributions.
Okay.
2, high levels of eye contact and energetic conversations. 3, people communicate directly with each other, not just through the leader.
Makes sense.
4, there are back channel or side conversations happening within the team. And 5, the team periodically goes outside itself to explore for new information.
And the amazing thing is, none of that is about individual skill or IQ. It's all about these seemingly small interaction behaviors.
Totally. Pentland even makes a comparison to apes, how enthusiasm attracts others and builds group intelligence. It underlines that point. They're just words. The behavior, the connection, the safety, that's often the real key.
Which might explain why successful groups often adopt those collective names. Pixarians, Googlers, Aponians, Keepy-Peasters.
Yeah, it reinforces that shared identity, that sense of belonging.
Okay, so the theory makes sense, the science is there. Let's look at more examples. How does this build safety thing play out in the real world? The book contrasts Google and Overture, right?
Yeah, back in the early days of search advertising, Overture, run by Bill Gross, was the big player. They pioneered pay-per-click, had funding, went public. They were the favorite.
Google was the scrappy underdog.
Right. And then comes this moment Coyle highlights. May 24th, 2002, Larry Page, Google's co-founder, pins a printout of some search results to a board in the kitchen.
And writes on it.
In big capital letters, "These ads suck."
Okay, that's blunt. In most companies, that might not go over well.
Definitely not. But Google's culture was different, very open, lots of debate, intense, but usually respectful. They played hockey in the parking lot, had these open Friday forums where anyone could grill the founder.
High interaction, lots of face-to-face. Sounds like those belonging cues are present.
Exactly. Lots of proximity, energy, safety to speak up. And then Jeff Dean, this really brilliant but generally quiet engineer.
Not even on the ads team, right?
No, completely different area. He's getting a coffee, sees the note, and it just bugs him.
So what does he do? Tell his manager, write a memo.
Nope. He just goes home and spends his entire weekend, Friday night, all day Saturday, Sunday night, completely rewriting the core engine for AdWords.
Without being asked, without telling anyone.
Pretty much. Sends out an email with the proposed fix at 5:05 a.m. Monday morning.
Wow. And did it work?
It worked incredibly well. Massively improved the relevance and performance of the ads. That fix essentially became the engine driving Google's dominance in search advertising. Billions of dollars.
While Overture, the established player, got bogged down in bureaucracy. Multiple meetings, committees, low belonging scores, you might say. They couldn't react quickly enough.
And the most amazing part is Jeff Dean barely remembers doing it.
Yeah, Coyle notes that when asked about it later, Dean's memory was fuzzy. It just felt normal, like the kind of thing you did at Google back then.
So Google won not just because they had smart people, but because they had a safer culture. People felt empowered to just jump in and fix things.
That's the argument. Safety enabled that kind of proactive problem solving.
The book has other simpler examples too, right? Like the puzzle experiment.
Oh yeah, that one's great. People are working on a puzzle, and some randomly get a little handwritten note, supposedly from another participant named Steve, offering a tip.
But the tip is useless.
Totally useless, contains no helpful information at all.
But
the people who got the note worked harder, were twice as motivated, kept at it 50% longer, enjoyed it more, and were more willing to tackle similar puzzles later.
Just because of a meaningless note. It wasn't meaningless in terms of connection. It was a signal someone cared, someone noticed, a belonging cue. That was the motivator.
Wild. And the cell phone experiment.
Another simple but powerful one. Scenario 1. Someone asks a stranger, "Can I borrow your cell phone?"
Okay. Scenario 2.
Same request, but prefaced with, "I'm so sorry about the rain. Can I borrow your cell phone?"
Just adding that bit about the rain.
Increased the positive response rate by 422%.
400%.
Yeah.
Just for acknowledging the shared situation.
Yep. It's a micro-belonging cue. We're in this together. This is a safe moment to connect. It lowers the barrier.
These small signals have huge effects, like the suicide prevention study.
Right. Patients discharged after a suicide attempt. Half got standard care, plus occasional postcards just saying, essentially, "We're thinking of you, we care."
And the postcard group.
Had half the rate of readmission to the hospital over the next 2 years.
Just from postcards. It's hard to believe sometimes.
Dr. Gregory Walton's insight is key here. These small signals work, but they need to be continuous. Like in a romantic relationship, you can't just say, "I love you" once and be done. You have to keep showing it.
Keep sending those signals.
Keep fueling the flame, as the book puts it. And this ties back to our brain chemistry, specifically the amygdala.
Which we usually think of as the fear center, right? Fight or flight.
It is, but it's also crucial for social connection. Belonging cues actually trigger the amygdala to build social bonds, track who's in our group, foster engagement. It's a different activation pattern than the fear response.
So Jay Van Bavel's research, when we feel part of a group, our amygdala switches focus.
Yeah, it intensely starts tracking other members of our in-group. It's like a powerful switch flips, changing our motivation, how we see the world.
So belonging feels internal, but it's triggered from the outside.
By those cues of closeness, safety, and a shared future, it's a continuous process. Larry Page's note, Jeff Dean's fix, Jonathan's listening, the stranger apologizing for the rain, they're all feeding that flame.
Cohesion comes from these signals, not just smart individuals.
Exactly. And research on startups backs this up. Companies built around shared values and emotional bonds, the commitment model tend to do better, especially when things get tough.
Even thinking about ancestors boosting performance, it suggests this deep link between group connection and individual ability.
It really does.
Yeah.
Now, maybe the most dramatic example of belonging cues emerging in an unlikely place, the Christmas truce, World War I.
Yeah, 1914, Flanders, just horrific conditions, mud, death, trenches, sometimes yards apart, deep historical hatred between the sides.
Official command forbade any fraternization, severe penalties, a truce seemed impossible.
But then Christmas Eve, it just happened, spontaneously.
In many places along the line, yes, started with singing carols exchanged between the trenches, Germans singing Still Nacht, British singing the first Knoll.
And
then soldiers cautiously started climbing out, meeting in no man's land, sharing cigarettes, chocolate schnapps, showing pictures of family.
It's surreal to imagine playing soccer, burying the dead together.
All of it happened. Tens of thousands of soldiers involved along large parts of the front, a complete, if temporary, suspension of hostility.
So it wasn't just the Christmas spirit. The book argues there's more to it.
Right. Historian Tony Ashworth's work suggests this wasn't totally out of the blue. It was the culmination of weeks, even months, of small, exchanged belonging cues.
Because they were so close, they could hear each other, smell the cooking, realize the enemy was dealing with the same mud and misery.
Exactly. That proximity fostered a kind of grudging empathy. And micro-truces had started appearing. Unspoken agreements not to shoot during meal times, or when it was pouring rain, or when guys went to collect straw.
Little signals of, I see you, I won't shoot right now.
These built up, designated sniper out-of-bounds zones, even a machine gunner who supposedly exchanged musical calls with the other side. The trenches became this weird petri dish for belonging cues.
The book quotes Captain Edward Hulse, meeting a German major, helping bury soldiers, exchanging a scarf. Hulse called it absolutely astounding.
And Corporal John Ferguson shaking hands with old Fritz, talking like old friends just hours after trying to kill each other.
So the truce wasn't a miracle. It was the result of this prolonged, unconscious exchange of signals saying, basically, we're the same. We're safe for now. Let's meet halfway.
A powerful illustration of how connection can emerge even in the worst circumstances.
Okay, let's shift gears again. WIPRO call center in India. Successful company, good pay, but high turnover.
Yeah, a common problem in that industry. They tried throwing money at it, bigger bonuses, better incentives didn't really work.
So they didn't experiment with new hires.
Right. Divided them into groups. Control group got standard training. Group 1 got standard training plus an extra hour all about WIPRO, the company's success, star performers, history, gave them a company sweatshirt.
Okay, focusing on the company identity.
Group 2 also got an extra hour, but it was focused entirely on the employee's unique identity and skills. What made them special, times they felt successful. They did an exercise about their strengths, and they also got a sweatshirt. But this sweatshirt had their own name printed on it, along with the company name.
Personalization, individualization.
Exactly. And the researcher, Bradley Statz, was initially skeptical. Like, how much difference can 1 hour really make?
But the results were significant.
Very surprising. 7 months later, Group 2, the ones focused on individual identity and with the personalized sweatshirts, had 250% higher retention than Group 1 and 157% higher than the control group.
250%, that's huge. Why the difference?
The thinking is Group 1 got information, but not really belonging cues. Group 2 got cues that felt personal, individualized, future-oriented. Your skills matter here. That activated the amygdala's connection circuits.
It made them feel seen as individuals within the group.
Right. Stats realized the power of making people feel genuinely pleased to be part of the group and creating space for them to be themselves.
And like Jeff Dean, the trainee interviewed later didn't remember the session details, but remembered feeling motivated.
Yep. The feeling lingered, even if the specifics faded.
So that's belonging. What about the opposite? The book looks at the Minuteman Missileers.
Yeah, a really tough situation. These are the officers in remote underground bunkers controlling U.S. nuclear missiles. Incredibly high stakes, intense training.
But they've had problems. Scandals, failed inspections.
A lot of problems in recent years. Mistakenly loaded warheads, failed inspections, reports of declining morale, cheating scandals, high burnout, frustration, even misconduct by commanders.
What was the typical response from leadership?
Often it was to crack down. More discipline, stricter rules, threats of consequences. Lieutenant Colonel Fold's memo basically saying, shape up or ship out.
Did it work?
Seemed to make things worse, more incidents followed.
So the book argues it's not just bad apples or lazy individuals.
It reframes it through the lens of belonging cues. Or rather, the lack of them. Let's ask those 3 questions.
Okay. Are they connected?
Extreme lack of connection, physical isolation in cramped underground capsules, social isolation, outdated tech, just unpleasant conditions.
Do they share a future?
That's another problem. The mission shifted after the Cold War. It feels like training for something that hopefully never happens. Career paths are limited. People feel stuck, like it's the island of misfit toys, as one put it.
And the big one, are they safe?
Definitely not psychologically safe. Constant high-stakes tests where any tiny error on incredibly long checklists can end your career. Intense pressure, fear of admitting mistakes. Punishment leads to more fear, more demoralization, potentially more errors.
It's like an environment designed to destroy cohesion.
Pretty much. A perfect storm of anti-belonging cues. It's not necessarily about the character of the individuals. Many former missileers go on to have successful careers elsewhere.
And the book contrasts this with nuclear submarine crews.
Yeah, similar isolation and high stakes, but often better cohesion. Why? Likely a higher density of belonging cues.
How so?
Much closer physical proximity for long periods. A clearer sense of purpose with global patrols. Better defined career paths. It fosters connection despite the environment.
Okay, so it's not just the situation, it's how the culture responds. How do leaders actively build this safety then? The book gives examples, right? Greg Popovich.
Yeah, the coach of the San Antonio Spurs. Statistically, one of the most successful coaches ever, consistently getting more wins out of his teams than expected, based on player talent alone.
And the Spurs are known for that unselfish, almost beautiful team play.
Right, like basketball Mozart. But Popovich himself, he's not exactly warm and fuzzy. He's known for being tough, demanding, even having a volcanic temper sometimes.
So how does he create cohesion? It's not just drafting high character guys.
That's part of it, but not the whole story. He's had players who weren't seen that way initially, but thrived. The book describes him at practice after a loss.
Instead of yelling.
He comes in dressed casually, brings fruit, and immediately starts connecting with players, physically pats on the back, speaks multiple languages, jokes around, even mock wrestles a player.
His GM says he fills their cups.
Exactly. He builds relationships, gets close, makes eye contact, tells players he loves them. He's famous for his intense, direct feedback, but it comes from a place of deep connection.
Like his relationship with Tim Duncan, built on trust and honesty.
Yeah, that set the tone. And he does unexpected things. After that loss, instead of watching game film
You showed a documentary.
on the Civil Rights Voting Rights Act and led a discussion about it. He does this regularly, talks about world events, politics, social issues, connects the players to something bigger than basketball.
His motto is, hug 'em and hold 'em.
And he uses food and wine constantly, team dinners, coaches' dinners. He obsesses over menus. He sends players articles about their hometowns, suggests restaurants for their families, constant personal connection.
It's relentless relationship building.
And it creates the safety needed for that tough feedback to land. It's like that magical feedback study the book mentions.
Which found the most effective feedback phrase was,
I'm giving you these comments because I have very high expectations and I know that you can reach them.
why does that work so well?
It sends 3 cues at once. You belong here, I'm commenting. We have high standards, expectations. I believe in you. You can reach them.
And Popovich does this constantly, connecting personally, giving feedback, offering perspective.
Yes, toggling between them. His yelling works because it's balanced by constant affirmation.
And the Spurs' greatest moment of cohesion wasn't a win.
Nope. It was the crushing loss in Game 6 of the 2013 finals. They were seconds away from winning the championship, and it slipped away. Devastation.
What did Popovich do?
Immediately gathered everyone. Family. Everybody to the restaurant, straight there. He arranged the tables for connection, ordered food and wine, greeted every player personally. They talked, shared, grieved, even laughed eventually.
They held them together, filled their cups when they were empty.
Exactly. His GM called it the greatest thing he'd ever seen in sports. They went on to win the championship the next year using the champagne they hadn't opened in 2013.
Wow. Okay, so that's Popovich, the relationship builder. What about Tony Hsieh at Zappos? Different approach.
Very different personality. Shea was brilliant, multi-talented, but also quite shy, introverted, loved puzzles, finding clever solutions.
Made millions selling his first company, Link Exchange, then invested in Zappos.
And his vision for Zappos wasn't just selling shoes online. It was about building this unique culture, fun and weirdness, focused on delivering personal, emotional connections.
Both to customers and employees.
Right. And then he took it further with the downtown project in Las Vegas, buying up a rundown area and trying to revitalize it using Zappos principles.
The book describes visiting his apartment radically open, people wandering through, a map covered in sticky notes for the downtown project, like a real-life Sim City.
Shea himself is quiet, speaks deliberately. Not a typical charismatic leader, but he has this core philosophy.
Collisions.
Exactly. He believes serendipitous personal encounters, collisions, are the lifeblood of creativity, community, cohesion. His goal was to maximize collisionable hours.
By design.
Yes. Closing off a convenient side entrance at Zappos to force people through the main area, rearranging furniture at parties to make people mingle more. It's about engineering the environment for interaction.
He called himself the architect of the greenhouse.
Right. His job wasn't to be the star plant, but to create the conditions for all the plants to thrive. He constantly used the word collision to shift people's mindset.
And people felt it, this magnetic pull.
Testimonials describe it that way. A feeling in the stomach, an unconscious ability to connect. Maggie Sue's story of being recruited.
Just a 2-line email. Meet these people. Ask them who else to meet.
Yeah. Confusing at first, but it sent the strong signal of trust and connection. She ended up moving to Vegas.
So she wasn't a big communicator, but he designed for connection. This links to Thomas Allen's research.
The Allen curve, yeah. Cold War research on engineering projects. Allen found the most successful projects had clusters of high communicators.
And he tried to figure out why they communicated so much. Wasn't intelligence or experience.
It was the distance between their desks. Simple physical proximity.
He didn't believe it at first.
Nope. Seemed too simple. But the data was clear. Communication drops off dramatically beyond about 8 meters and skyrockets within 6 meters. Just seeing people regularly makes a huge difference.
Proximity is like a connective drug.
And it applies to digital communication, too. We email people more often if they sit near us. Co-located teams finish projects faster.
So she was intuitively leveraging the Allen curve, creating efficiencies of connection.
Exactly. His recruiting tactic, inviting people to just come hang out, experience the environment, let the proximity and collisions do the work. About 1 in 20 ended up moving there.
A powerful, if unconventional, approach. Though the book notes the downtown project faced challenges later.
Yeah, its long-term success remains a question mark. But the principles of designing for collision are powerful.
Okay, so we've seen the theory, the examples. What about practical takeaways? Ideas for action.
Right. Building safety is a skill. It takes practice, recognizing patterns, delivering the right signals.
Like Will Phelps, the bad apple researcher. He changed his own behavior.
Yeah, started focusing more on active listening cues, head tilt, eye contact, affirmations, asking clarifying questions instead of trying to be clever.
And Amy Edmondson, the psychological safety expert.
She became more conscious of actively creating safety, especially during tense moments, constantly checking in.
So, first tip, over-communicate your listening.
Use those nonverbal cues. Show you're locked in. And avoid interruptions, smooth, turn-taking signals cohesion. Though excited, collaborative interjections are different.
Spotlight your fallibility early on, especially if you're a leader.
Don't pretend to have all the answers. Admit mistakes. Ask for input. What am I missing? This is just my thinking. It invites connection.
Like R.C. Buford admitting he was terrified about the Spurs' future, even when they were winning.
It creates vulnerability and invites others in. Edmondson says leaders have to invite input explicitly.
Embrace the messenger. When someone brings bad news,
don't just tolerate it, thank them for it. Hug the messenger, metaphorically. Show you value their honesty or they won't bring it next time.
Preview future connection. Little signals that link the present to a shared future.
Yeah, like the coach pointing to a pro player saying, he sat right where you are 3 years ago. Connects effort now to possibility later.
Overdue thank yous. Seems simple, but
it's huge in these cultures.
Yeah.
Popovich thanking star players for letting him coach them. It affirms the relationship beyond just gratitude. Thanking someone makes them more likely to help someone else later. It builds a cycle of positivity.
Like Chef Thomas Keller thanking the dishwasher. Publicly valuing everyone's contribution.
Exactly. Be painstaking in the hiring process. It sends huge signals about who fits and what matters.
Eliminate bad apples. Low tolerance for toxic behavior.
The All Blacks rugby team rule, no dickheads. Simple, clear, effective.
And finally, create safe, collision-rich spaces.
Design matters. Pixar's atrium, the SEALs team rooms where the coffee machine is placed, it all influences interaction.
The Bank of America call center. Just aligning coffee breaks and getting better machines in common areas reduced stress, boosted productivity.
And replacing small cafeteria tables with bigger ones did too. Small design choices can unlock significant performance gains by fostering connection.
So wrapping up this part of the deep dive, we've really focused on that foundational skill. Build safety. It's all about those belonging cues.
Right. We look at the science, the experiments, examples from Google to the trenches to the Spurs, and some practical steps. The other skills, share vulnerability, establish purpose, build on this. Maybe we can dive into those next time.
Definitely. So the final thought for you, the learner, is this. Think about the groups you're part of. Your job, your community, maybe even your family.
Where do you see these signals of safety and connection? Or where are they missing?
And what might happen if you consciously try to send more of those cues yourself? Just observe, maybe experiment a little, see what impact it has on the group and on your own sense of belonging.
Yeah, it's often the small things that make the biggest difference.
Thanks for listening. Visit our library and subscribe below for more book summaries. This has been a Sprint Reads production.